Hey guys, and welcome back to another tutorial in Python. Today I'm going to be talking to you about classes and inheritance. Now, classes are a very important concept within Python. Because Python is an object-oriented programming language, classes are a great way to actually organize your code. So to give you a very simplistic example, let's say I had a dog, and dogs come in many breeds, shapes, and sizes. And so a class is a really good way to actually start defining characteristics about a dog, whether it's white, whether it's black, what breed it is, and all that other kind of stuff. So what it helps you do is it helps you categorize certain characteristics about something or somebody into one place, and then you can write functions within that class to sort of call upon to say, let's say I want to say, what color is a dog? There's a specific function for that, or what breed is a dog, but everything is centered around a dog. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. In today's tutorial, I'm going to take a slightly different spin, and I'm going to talk about something we can all relate to, and that is purchasing things and bank balances. So what we're going to do today is we're going to create a class called myPurchase. And what we're going to do with this is we're going to pass in a certain number of arguments or characteristics, we'll call it, about a specific purchase. First, we're going to pass in the person's name who made the purchase. Second, we're going to pass in the merchant. And then third, we're going to pass in the amount. And finally, we're going to be able to print out that person's name, where they shopped, how much they spent. We are going to create a instance of that class by different people. So for example, we'll create somebody named John and we'll create somebody named Michelle. So let's give this a shot. As we go through this will be a little bit more clear. So one thing right off the top is when you define a class, you want to make sure that all of your words that are separate words start off capitalized. So this is just common methodology within Python. So in this case, my purchase are two separate words. So I would start my and purchase with a capital, and everything else is lowercase, and this is typically how you would denote a class in Python. Now the next thing we got to do is that every single time I have an instance of this class, which I will explain in a few minutes, it is just going to initialize that self characteristic to that person. So this will become clear as we start coding, because classes can be a little bit confusing. So the next thing we got to do is, like I said, there's a certain number of variables I want to pass in. I want to pass in the person's name, the merchant, as well as the amount that they spent. And so now what we have to do is we have to initialize each one of these variables. And so to do that, we have to use a self method. So we're going to go self.name is equal to name, and this is very, very common in classes. You'll see this everywhere. And then finally, I want to print, and I use a formatted print statement as usual. My name is name. Today I shopped. All right. So now in order to start using this class, so what we've done is we've created a certain category. So we've categorized purchases, and we're going to categorize this by people who are making purchases because we're defining a name for them. Now I can do something like John is equal to my purchase. And so what I've done in this case now is I've said I'm going to take this class, my purchase, and I'm going to define that as John. What that means is I've taken this class, my purchase, and all of these characteristics in it, and I've given John those characteristics. So essentially, when I start running functions now, I can say John, and then start calling these different individual characteristics. Now, in order to do that, because I've defined certain characteristics, I have to pass those characteristics in here. Self is something you don't generally pass through, or you don't pass through because it's part of the class. So in this case, I'm going to say John. I'll say the merchant was 7-Eleven, and the amount spent was $50. So what I've done here is I've created an instance of this class and associated it with John. So John now has all the characteristics of this class. I can do the same thing if I do Michelle is equal to the same thing here. I'll just copy and paste this and change the name, and I'll change this to Walmart. When I hit print, what you're going to notice here is that it actually says my name is John. Today I shopped at 7-Eleven and spent $50. My name is Michelle. Today I shopped at Walmart and I spent $50. So technically speaking, I was able to just write 2 lines of code, and I was able to generate these sentences. Now, if you go back to our previous tutorials, for me to do this is going to take a lot of extra coding. I'm going to have to sit there and I'm going to have to write print statements, and I have to assign, this merchant to John in a variable, this dollar amount to John in a variable, and I'm going to have 5 or 6 different variables. This is why classes are so important because I can create an instance. So John is an instance of all of these characteristics. Michelle is an instance of all of these characteristics. Now, the other thing you can do in classes is actually make more functions. So let's say I know that they've spent $50 and I want to be able to understand what their balance is now. How would I do that? I can actually create another function and we'll call it show balance. Because these two functions are already part of this class, this is called a constructor function. I don't need to define all of these again. These will be available to me as long as I put self in front of them. So the only new variable that I need to pass in this one is their current balance. And so now I would just say, as the function, I would say the current balance is equal to self.current balance is equal to current balance minus self.amount. So if I want to reference a variable that's not sitting in this function specifically, because all I have is current balance passing as a variable, because these are part of the same class, I can just use the word self and pull the amount variable from here and just pass it into this function as well, which is kind of cool. And then finally I can say print my current balance is current underscore balance. And let me just format this. There we go. And so now for me to just go ahead and understand what my balance is, all I got to do is I got to say John.showBalance, and I just have to put in my current balance, 1,000, and I can say Michelle.showBalance, and I can put, I don't know, $500 here. So technically now it should print these two lines, and then below that it should print the balance. So for John, it should show $950. For Michelle, it should show $450. So if we run this, so my name is John. Today I shopped at 7-Eleven. My name is Michelle. Today I shopped at Walmart, spent $50, and then it shows their balance here. And I can rearrange this. I can put this so that the names are together and so forth. So I can rerun it like this as well. And so when I rerun it, it does the same thing. That's exactly what we want. And so that's exactly how classes work. I just create an instance. I can call, so whenever I define a function within a class, that's actually called a method. So that is called a method of the class. So in this case, I don't actually have to go and write myPurchase.showBalance because I've already allocated my purchase and the associated variables to John. And so now I'm just saying John, which is now represented as this class, dot showBalance, which is right here. And it's able to now do all this arithmetic in here and actually print out the variable for me, or print out the answer, for me. Now, the other thing I want to talk to you about is inheritance. So let's say I wanted to do one more thing, and that is, as I'm going to these different retailers, these different merchants, I want to understand how much it's going to cost me to actually, take a bus ride or a taxi cab or something like that. So let's say I had another class sitting in another file or, sitting somewhere else here, and let's just call it bus ride. And I'll say define, again, I won't go too much into the initialization function, and all pass means in this case is I really have nothing to do with this initialization function. I don't have any variables to pass, I have nothing, so it's just saying, okay, I've initialized it, great, now just pass it and move on to whatever you're doing next. And so what we want to do next here is we actually want to create a function called define find fare or something like this. And so the other thing I want to do is I want to create a little dictionary called fare. And in this dictionary, remember dictionaries are key value pairs, I want to store the merchant name, plus I want to store how much it's going to cost to take that trip. So we'll start with Walmart, and we'll say it's $5. Then we'll go with 7-Eleven and say it's $4. And then I'll say just the bank, and I will say $3. And then after that, we would say the actual fare is going to be equal to fare.self-merchant. And I'm going to explain what this is going to do in just a quick second. So we'll say print. Now what happens in inheritance is that if I wanted to access this function, technically I would need to go and initialize John to also be part of this class, which is kind of redundant. The other way I can do it is I can just take all this stuff, copy and paste it, and put it in here, again, which is redundant. It's too much work. And especially if you have hundreds of these, it doesn't make a lot of sense to do that. Hundreds of these methods, for example. So there's an easy way to do that. I can just say class myPurchase, and in these parentheses, I can say that I want to take everything that's part of this class bus ride, and I want to be able to use it. So now, if I want to do find fare, all I have to do is say John dot, and now if you notice that find fare is actually available as a method, even though we never initialized John to be part of the class bus ride. We only initialized John to be part of my purchase. And now that I have find fare in there, I have the merchant 7-Eleven. It should return back the fare will be 4. And there you go. The fare will be 4. That's exactly what we wanted. And if I were to do the same thing for Michelle, and I would just type here Michelle dot find fare. Now Michelle's going to Walmart. That should return $5 back. When I hit print, the fare will be $5 here. So that is how inheritance works. That's how classes work. You know, as we get further into these videos, whether it's part of this series or whether it's going to be another video on this channel, you will see me using classes quite a bit. I've used them when I've done a lot of advanced algorithms, when I've done different types of modeling and designs. I do use classes quite a bit, but I wanted to give you that intro on classes and inheritance. So if you found this, hit that like button, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks. Bye.